Here we go with Army Brats. We're on chapter 9. It's my turn, Rosie said fiercely to the girl from her class who was trying to cut the line. Rosie had been waiting for a million hours to go down the water slide at the Fort Patrick pool, and she wasn't going to wait a second longer than necessary. When she'd woken up that morning, the sun was bright, the sky was clear, and Dad had said he'd take them to the pool. Rosie, who had been waiting since the first day to dip her toes into the waters of the best pool she'd ever seen, has been overjoyed. And the pool had not disappointed. It was huge, with a special soaker area with showers that sprayed swimmers, four different diving boards, and two slides. And for the little kids, and this one, the big twisty slide that whooshed you out with a huge splash into the deep section of the pool. Oh, okay, that wasn't for the little ones. Two slides, one for the little kids, and this one. Okay, the big one for the big guys. Okay. Rosie had already done it once, and she couldn't wait to go again, this time face first, which was why she was angry at Asia for trying to cut. Oh, sorry, Asia said, shrinking back a little at Rosie's tone. It was only then that Rosie realized it was just a mistake, and Asia hadn't meant to cut. But then Asia turned to her friend Oscar, who was standing behind them. That girl's mean, she whispered. And this is how it starts, right, guys? No one wants to be friends with her, Oscar agreed. Rosie whirled around to tell them that she didn't want to be friends with them or anyone else in her class anyway, but then a big kid in line behind them spoke up. Are you going down the slide or did you chicken out? He asked Rosie. I never chicken out, Rosie cried, stung by the accusation. She grabbed her mat and practically threw herself down the slide. The wind whipped in her hair as she picked up speed, flying around one turn and getting to the twisty part where water sprayed in her face. She shrieked with delight when she finally went barreling into the pool, the water deliciously cold. But as she wiped the water from her eyes and gathered up her mat, there was a muddy feeling in her belly from the things Asia and Oscar had said. Rosie hadn't tried to be rude. She just didn't want anyone cutting in front of her. But now Asia thought she was mean, and Oscar did too. Plus, they probably remembered how on Friday at school Rosie had yelled at Benny for taking too long on the swings and at Debbie for hogging all the markers during art. Rosie's shoulders slumped. She really didn't think it was her fault, though. They shouldn't have been so pushy in the first place, and Asia should be more careful if she didn't want people getting upset at her for cutting. Rosie pulled herself out of the pool, set her mat on the pile next to the slide, and started toward the diving board. The chlorine smell and sounds of little kids squealing with happiness, older kids talking and laughing, and the general festive feeling of the pool started to lift her spirits a bit. Maybe she'd do a cannonball from the highest diving board, even though it was almost as tall as a skyscraper. That would be amazing. She started to smile again just thinking about it. Hey, Rosie Posey, you looked great on the slide, Dad said, walking up to her. He'd been sitting in the family area, a big grassy section where everyone spread out towels. Lots of grown-ups sat there and chatted or read while the kids swam, which Rosie did not understand. It was burning hot, so the place to be was in the pool, not next to it. Yeah, it was really bravo zippy, Rosie said, happy to see Dad even though he was wearing a big straw hat that looked kind of silly. Dad smiled. I think it's Bravo Zulu. Bravo Zulu. For good. For good job, he said, which is definitely was. And I was talking to some kids up there, he went on, moving over slightly so a woman and a toddler can go by. Are they friends from your class? Excuse me. Now Rosie wasn't happy to see him at all. No, they aren't nice, she said. Dad's expression was very serious as he looked down at her. Remember about how you need to be nice if you want the other kids to be nice? He asked her. Did you do something that might have hurt feelings? It sounded like Dad was the super spy, not just Mom. Not on purpose, Rosie said. She poked her toe in a little puddle of pool water and used it to draw a line on the concrete. It's important to remember that other kids have feelings too, Dad said, and to be respectful of those feelings. Okay, she said, I'm going to do a big cannonball now. You can watch me. I got a bad feeling about this. Let's see. Dad's shoulders slumped slightly, but he nodded, then headed back to where the Baileys had set up camp with their towels, water bottles, and lots of sunscreen. Rosie marched toward the diving section, but when she noticed Charlotte sitting on the steps of the shallow end with two girls, excuse me, she hurried over. Hi, Rosie called. Charlotte would be way more fun than Dad. Oh, hi, Charlotte said in a voice that did not really sound like Charlotte. Who's this darling little girl? One of Charlotte's friends asked. She was wearing a two-piece bathing suit that showed her stomach and only had her feet in the water. The other girl had on heart-shaped sunglasses, and she was sitting next to Charlotte on the first step. Rosie smiled. My sister Rosie, Charlotte said. Rosie, this is Sophia and Mari, my friends from school. Does your sister paint your nails for you? Sophia asked. She began swishing her feet gently in the water. No, that's too boring. But we do play. Charlotte stood up so fast, Rosie nearly let out her own screech of doom. Rosie, did you do the slide yet? Charlotte asked. Yeah, twice, Rosie said, not sure why Charlotte needed to interrupt her, especially since Rosie had been planning to invite Charlotte's new friends over to play dolls with them. Oh, you guys aren't going to believe this, Mari said with a gasp. She had lowered her sunglasses and was looking over toward the front entrance of the pool. Cecilia Baxter is here. And check out that bathing suit. Rosie looked over and saw a girl walking with a younger boy. She was wearing a pink bathing suit. Rosie squinted, but didn't notice anything special about it. It looks like the kind of suit I wore when I was 5, Sophia laughed. I mean, really, who still wears pink in 6th grade? Mari and Charlotte giggled, but Rosie didn't think it was very funny or very nice. I like pink, she informed Sophia, who smiled at her in a way Rosie didn't care for. Like she knew a secret Rosie didn't. Of course you do, sweetie, she said. Pink is fine when you're a little girl. Rosie opened her mouth to tell Sophia her thoughts about that, but then she felt a hand clamp down on her shoulder, a very heavy hand. Rosie, were you going to go to the slide or the diving board? I'll watch you if you want. Charlotte was giving Rosie a very serious look. Rosie considered protesting, but Charlotte's friends were kind of boring. The diving board would be more fun after all, especially with an audience. Promise, she asked. Charlotte nodded. Yes, definitely, she said. So Rosie continued on toward the diving board, excited to impress the girls with her jump. The line wasn't that long, though there were 3 big boys standing in front of her, shoving one another and laughing. Watch it, Rosie said when one of them bumped into her. The boy didn't even seem to hear her. Hey, isn't that Sergeant Wimpy? The tallest one asked, pointing toward the soaker section of the pool. Maybe we can get him to reenact that picture. The other boys looked over, and Rosie did too, but she didn't see anyone who looked like a sergeant at all. As she scanned the pool area, she did see her brother sitting next to one of the soakers. It was so big, he was almost hidden behind it. In fact, if he was playing hide and seek, it would be a great spot for hiding. It's your turn, Chase, a girl called to the tall boy. He stopped laughing with his friends and headed up the ladder. Tom, Rosie called, turning back to her brother. I'm going to do a cannonball. Watch me. Tom didn't see her at first, so she waved both hands over her head. He bit his lip and took a step back when he saw her. Clearly, he was worried the diving board was too high. Don't worry, I can do it, Rosie shouted. It was finally her turn, so she grabbed the sides of the ladder and began climbing up. It really was high. Rosie paused, squinting down at the people swimming. The water was awfully far away. But Rosie was no chicken, so she took a deep breath and she ran to the end of the board and jumped. Her heart was nearly thumping out of her chest, and she might have let out a tiny little scream. But she hit the water with a terrific splash, then sank nearly to the bottom. Rosie was utterly exhilarated as she swam up to the surface, laughing when she broke through. That had been amazing. She paddled quickly to the side and looked around. Dad was clapping from where he was sitting with a few of his neighbors. They're clearly impressed with her. Charlotte gave her a thumbs up, and Tom waved briefly before disappearing into the locker area. Rosie beamed, proud of how brave she was and excited to do it again. But as she pulled herself out of the pool, she caught sight of Asia, sitting on a big shark towel with Oscar. Debbie was with them, along with Ariane and Kai, who were also in Rosie's class. They were sharing a pack of gummy bears and laughing. Looking at them together, all cozy on the towel, gave Rosie a hollow feeling right at the center of her chest. Just then, some water hit Rosie on the back, as though someone had splashed her on purpose. Rosie turned to give this person a very indignant look, but the woman, who was not being careful as she got out of the pool, was too busy talking to her friend to take any notice of Rosie. She was gone all night, and she's never been gone more than an hour before, she said, sniffing a little, her soft southern accent making the words sound even more tragic. Water ran down her braids, hung on the colored beads at the ends, and fell onto her striped blue bathing suit. Pepper's just having a little adventure, the other woman said, squeezing water out of her long brown hair. Dogs like to explore, but I'm sure once she gets hungry, she'll be back. The first woman shook her head, making the beads clink together. No, she already missed dinner last night and breakfast this morning, she said, now sounding tearful. I think it's safe to say that Pepper's gone missing. Missing. The word echoed in Rosie's head as the two women headed toward the locker room. This dog Pepper had disappeared, just like Buddy. An iciness crept over Rosie despite the hot sun, because now what had just seemed strange was what Mom would call a pattern. Two dogs missing could be a coincidence, or it could mean something was going on. And Rosie, who had promised Cupcake a reunion with Buddy, was going to get to the bottom of it. And that, my friends, is the end of chapter 9. I'll see you for chapter 10.